Hello and welcome to the Nexus Today show, Modi Operandi. We're looking at how India's leader, Narendra Modi, runs this vast country and is looking unstoppable. Now, maybe it's because he's working 24/7. Legend has it the man sleeps just 3 hours a day. So at 67, what's his secret? We're also looking at the sacred cow of Indian politics. Is Modi rewriting history to put Hindus first? And he's a yogi who loves bear hugging. How did he go from being banned in America to Mr. Popular on the world stage? We're going to find out all that and more here in the Nexus. Hello and welcome to the Nexus. I'm Matthew Moore, and today we're looking at how India's Prime Minister just keeps on winning. Now we're going to be joined by Professor Subir Sinha. He says that Modi is a great politician, but possibly letting down ordinary people. Taking the opposite view, we have Krishna Saagar. Now he is a member of Modi's party, the BJP, and has met the Prime Minister a couple of times. And finally, the Modi biographer, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Now he says Modi's hoping to live forever in Indian history. So now we're all gathered. Let's look at the man who's taken Indian politics to the next level, professionalised it if you like, the Prime Minister who's said to be working 24/7. When you're the head of the world's biggest democracy, there is little time to rest. But fortunately, Narendra Modi is up to the challenge. Up at 4 a.m, the first order of the day, like so many of us nowadays, check social media. With 41 million followers, Modi is the second most followed world leader on Twitter, a few million behind you-know-who. And once he's fired off a few tweets and scanned the papers, it's time to nurture body and soul. Modi practices yoga for 45 minutes every morning, wherever he is in the world. He even declared the 21st of June International Yoga Day.
योग जो शरीर, मन, बुद्धि को जोड़ता है, वो योग आज विश्व को अपने साथ जोड़ने में बहुत बड़ी अहम भूमिका अदा कर रहा है.
After nurturing his soul, it's time for a quick breakfast. Nothing too substantial, rice crackers and some ginger tea, typically, before heading back to the office for 9 a.m. sharp. Since coming to office in 2014, Modi has made one thing very clear.
अब एक ही रास्ता है जो हमारा भला कर सकता है, और रास्ते का नाम है विकास.
And he's launched any number of initiatives to achieve this, like Make in India, which aims to transform India into a global design and manufacturing hub, and Skill India, which hopes to train millions of Indians by 2022. It's hungry work, and once he's checked that it's all on track, it's time for a simple vegetarian lunch. By midday, it's back to business, meeting government staff and greeting dignitaries. Modi has played host to an extraordinary 30 world leaders so far this year. But more on that later. To make sure his staff are keeping up with him, he reportedly hands out Employee of the Month and Year awards. Once the diplomacy and morale boosting is over, it's home time. 10:30 p.m, it's time for a light and very late dinner, usually in front of a TV debate show. Not that relaxing.
But since you've asked it, I want to ask you a counter question.
What a mouthful. And once he's digested that, the rest of the evening is spent replying to emails before he finally retires with a good book at midnight. And after an hour's reading, it's time to sleep for 3 whole hours before getting up and doing it all again. Well, he puts the rest of us to shame, really. Let's go to Krishna, first of all, in Hyderabad. You've met the Prime Minister a couple of times. Does he really have that kind of energy and stamina?
He has all the energy and stamina of a 20-year-old. And it's amazing to see a man who's so disciplined, who's so simple, and who's so empty in his head, because he doesn't treat his head as a garbage can, and he's always thinking and acting at the same time, because he's a man who's not very preemptive. I mean, he thinks on his feet, and he's extremely a man in a hurry, because he understands he's 67. He's got a great opportunity by the people of India, who's given him a popular mandate, and that too a massive one, where he can make decisions to, his agenda, his governance agenda has to be fulfilled in 5 years.
Okay.
And the agenda is very clear. It is reform, perform, and transform. That's
yes.
what he's up to.
Yes, I also saw him on an interview, and he said one more thing: inform. Let's go to Nilanjan. Nilanjan, yes, he's energetic and he's a man in a hurry. He's also, as you put it, as a biographer, hugely ambitious. Does that ambition mean that he comes first or the country comes first?
I was listening very carefully to the way you were describing as to what he does in the day. There's just a small little addition which I wish to make. 6 years ago, when I was researching on his biography and I was meeting Mr. Modi, he told me, and I was quite astounded with it, that he surfs the net. So I told him, what do you actually surf on the net? He said, well, I read a bit of few things. Then I also look into Google alerts. I said, what kind of Google alerts have you put in? So he said, well, I've put in Gujarat, I've put in development. And he also mentioned that I've also put in Narendra Modi. Now, I found it very absolutely astounding that a person of his stature would actually put a Google alert to his name, which means that he's so obsessed with what is being written about him. The good, bad, and the ugly is really what defines him. So basically, he does not want to be left out of being written about at any point of time. There is a huge amount of passion. I think that we really cannot say that what comes first, whether the nation comes first or personal glory comes first. I think both of it. He sees personal glory through the development of India, and he sees the development of India through his personal glory. That is the way I think he looks at it. He thinks that both of them are interlinked.
Now, you mentioned the internet. Let's go to Subir Sinha now. Subir, his power and his use of the social media and the internet generally, do you think that is a new thing for an Indian leader?
Yes, and not just, I don't think it is just for Indian leaders. I think in terms of, the world as a whole, it is an unprecedented kind of a politician that we see in Modi. He has made tremendous use of social media. And in fact, in something that we wrote about him fairly recently, he says that that's the first thing that he sees in the morning is his various accounts, and he uses his devices. And that sort of connects to the question regarding his energy as well. I mean, we have seen him to be massively energetic in his campaigning. We have also seen him very, very energetic in terms of cultivating a social media persona. And it's not just the Twitter and the Facebook. He has a presence on multiple platforms.
Let's take a look at his record. Now, we'll start with all the states he's been winning. So here's the map when he won the first election in 2014. You take a look at what's called the saffron surge here. You see, in March 2014, take a look at all that saffron. The BJP had 7 states, pretty good. But fast forward 4 years, take a look at this. 21 states there by March 2018. So what explains that? Krishna, let me come to you. What explains winning all those states?
Why are we such a mean winning machine? Bharatiya Janata Party's ideology has been colored and distorted by Congress, which was in the ruling for 60 years out of 70 years of independent India. They have camouflaged Bharatiya Janata Party and misrepresented it as a Hindu party. While the ideology of our party is integral humanism and nation first. And this is the time when people of India, after 60 years, are realizing we mean business, we mean inclusive development, we mean reforms, we mean transforming their lives. And that is why they are voting for us consistently and continuously since 2014.
We've talked about development being Modi's strong suit, but there are critics who say he's a bit more like Trump. Actually, he takes care of the rich, the businessmen, and the middle classes are suffering. Is that a reasonable accusation?
When you talk about Modi, there is something which comes across very strongly, that there is a huge gap between what was promised during the parliament elections in 2014 and what has been delivered so far. You were talking about Make in India, you were talking about Skill India. But when we actually go down and look at the figures, we find that not much Make in India has actually happened, in the sense that not much investment has really come in, not jobs have been generated. In fact, this was one of the main reasons as to why Mr. Modi's party, the BJP, escaped barely by the skin of its teeth in his home state in Gujarat, where elections were held just 2 months ago. They got a majority in Gujarat, but it was the lowest number of seats that has been won by the BJP
That's right.
in the last 20 years.
Just for our international audience then, there was an election in Gujarat late last year, and the BJP did win it, but did quite badly by their record. And now you mentioned Make in India, and perhaps it all is more just slogans than actually performing in real life. And the national Indian network, NDTV, has their own take on it. Have a watch of this.
Make in India, make in India. Just go on chanting the slogan, Mera. Oh, make in India. बस यही कहता जा. बनता है क्या किसने देखा.
It's quite amusing. Let's go to Subir now. Subir, what is the intention there behind that little satirical sketch?
Well, look, I mean, he promised a lot of jobs. In fact, one of the interesting things about Modi's win in 2014 was how much more he promised than what he needed to in order to get the number of seats that he did. And, he has won, obviously, he's, as Krishna said, they have now power in 21 states. But exactly the reasons that led to that kind of surge of the BJP's power is, in my view, the Achilles heel of the BJP. Because the promises were so fantastic, so excessive, and the expectations were as well.
Having said that, he did say he had come in to re-energize the economy. If we take a look at the economy, India is now the fastest growing major economy in the world, 7.2% enjoyed over the last 3 months of last year. Compare that to China's 6.9%. Must be happy with that. What do you think, Krishna?
We are proud that India is the fastest growing economy in the world, and certainly the contribution of Bharatiya Janata Party as a ruling government in this particular 4 years has made a lot of difference. And you can also look at the FDI inflows, and the foreign exchange reserves have grown multiple times. And today, India is looked at as a bright spot for investment across the world, thanks to the ease of doing business. And the ratings on ease of doing business has grown exponentially under the leadership of Narendra Modi.
Well, Trump has America first as a slogan. Modi's been accused of being Hindu first. In fact, there are all sorts of reasons why India's minorities, particularly Muslims, are feeling worried.
Narendra Modi governs a country of 1.32 billion people. That is 4 times the population of the United States. 80% are Hindu, just over 1 billion people. 14% are Muslims, 188 million people. If they formed their own nation, they'd be the 3rd most populous Muslim country in the world, behind Indonesia and Pakistan. Sikhs and other faiths make up around 6%. Modi's a hero for Hindu nationalists, but not so well regarded by religious minorities ever since the Gujarat riots of 2002, when more than 1,000 people, mostly Muslims, died. Modi was chief minister of the state at the time, and Muslims accuse him of instigating the riots and not doing enough to stop them. India's Supreme Court cleared him of both accusations.
Muslims' perception is quite clear that he is anti-Muslim, and whatever decision he will take as PM, that will go against Muslims.
And Modi's rule has emboldened Hindu hardliners. They consider cows sacred, and vigilantes have increasingly been attacking Muslim farmers and butchers who slaughter cows. The issue has boiled over in Parliament. Modi's party is even accused of rewriting history, apparently appointing scholars early last year to prove that Hindus are descended from India's first inhabitants. It's led to fears that Modi's government may be shaping India into a nation where it's Hindu first, challenging the country's secular founding principles. Many Indians worry they may become second-class citizens.
Well, what is the situation like for Muslims now in India? Nilanjan, if you could answer that one for us.
The situation for Muslims is not particularly good. It's not particularly good in recent times because there is a concerted attack on minorities, not just Muslims, but even Christians from the side of the BJP. You have to go into the historical reasons that the BJP considers that Indians are only those people whose motherland or fatherland and the Holy Land is in this geographical part, region which we call as India. So which means that you actually end up saying that Muslims and Christians are not really Indians, that they are basically originally Hindus who converted, and we are rather going to have them converting back to Hinduism.
Well, let's go over to Subir now and find out his view on this. Subir, is it the case that essentially the government is saying, look, Hindus have been here the longest and therefore it is only right that they should be given priority?
Yes, they have just set up a committee to rewrite Indian history, and in fact members of that committee believe that Indian history, the history of Hindus is millions of years old, which is much older than even the arrival of Homo sapiens on the planet. On the issue of the cow, which is connected to all of this, the cow for the BJP is a political animal. It's okay to eat beef in northeast India, it's okay to eat beef in southern India, but it's not okay to eat beef in central India or in northern India. So there's no particular ideological commitment really per se. On the question of Hindu history, I think that is one of the deepest cultural projects that the Modi government has undertaken, and perhaps that is the one thing towards which the Modi government has taken the longest and most successful strides, much more so than the economy, much more so than the polity, the rewriting of history books, and basically stopping funding for any research in history or in the social sciences that does not conform to their particular agenda of rewriting Hindu history is basically being switched off.
Let's go back to Krishna now. Krishna in Hyderabad, let me ask you something. Is the BJP and Prime Minister Modi using religion for political purposes?
India runs by a constitution, Matthew. It is not a banana republic to be run by the whims and fancies of one elected leader. So it is a disaster. People who call themselves intellectuals do rate themselves very low when they say that one prime minister can change the shape of a nation in 4 years. It's a pitiful thing. Having said that, we have been voted into power in states where there are Muslims, 25% of Muslims. This is a nation which is secular. This is a nation which is guarded and guided by the constitution. And this is a nation which is being run in a manner which is accountable to the parliament. So, going above all these issues and connecting the dots.
Subir just wants to come in for a moment. Let's give him a second. Subir, do come in.
Well, talking about respect for parliament, we've had the entire budget passed in 30 minutes with no debate whatsoever. Can Mr. Krishna tell us how many members of parliament or even of legislative assemblies are Muslims all across the country? Is it not true that you have chief ministers of big states like Uttar Pradesh, which are massively Muslim, which have large Muslim populations, where including Mr. Modi, the entire campaign was about the demonization of Muslims? Is it not true that when you talk about Muslims, you always bring up the issue of the fact that they are not authentic Indians and perhaps have connections with terrorist groups outside of India? It is not, I don't think, acceptable
Okay, Subir, let's give
BJP
Krishna a
take
chance
this
to
view.
answer that. Krishna.
Yeah, this is a regular TV debate in India, Matthew, so don't worry about that. We're used to it. But again, all false short. There's nothing true here because in the parliament, if the budget is passed, it is passed according to a voice vote and nothing else. If the discussion didn't happen, it didn't happen because they're stalling the parliament. What can the government do? As simple as that. And then talking about Muslims in India has become fashionable. Talking about Hindus is a crime. Well, I'm a proud Hindu, but I'm an Indian first. And our party believes in Indian first, nation first.
India first. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the approval rating of the Prime Minister now. It is actually very, very high, 88%. Now, this is a small sample. Nilanjan, I have to come back to you for this one. It's a small sample by the Pew Research Centre, barely 3,000 people. Do these approval rating surveys carry any weight?
Now, this was a survey which was conducted in March 2017. It was released in November 2017, 6 months after the most important tax reform in India, goods and service tax, was introduced, which has led to a huge amount of unpopularity and resentment among the people. So Mr. Modi is definitely not as popular as earlier.
Okay, Nilanjan, thank you very much for that. Now, because of Modi's association with the Gujarat riots, the United States actually banned him from entering America. But shortly after his election victory in 2014, he was not only allowed into the country, he was actually welcomed and celebrated at Madison Square Garden, where he joined 18,000 people from the Indian diaspora. 2 years later, he was given the rare honor of addressing both houses of Congress.
Today, our relationship has overcome the hesitations of history. Mr. Speaker, in every sector of India's forward march, I see the US as an indispensable partner.
Well, let's go back to Nilanjan. Nilanjan, do you think the United States and others were right to forget about the whole Gujarat riots issue? I mean, it's important to note, of course, that he was cleared by the Indian Supreme Court, but they had their own minds made up, but clearly things have changed now.
You know, as an analyst, one has always to look in the other country's shoes and also look at it. What do you do with a person who has been duly elected by a country which has 1.32 billion people? You have to give him the same kind of recognition and the respect which you gave to the leader of the previous party. You have to do business, because at the end of it, the world is running not on politics but on business. So you have to safeguard business interests in your own country. So I had expected right after Mr. Modi becoming the Prime Minister that doors which had been shut to him in various parts of the world would open immediately after he became Prime Minister. And that is what has happened.
Subir, that's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, you can't really afford not to do business with India these days.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, he's been accepted as the elected Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy. I don't think it would make sense for any country to refuse him entry in that particular capacity. On the issue of his popularity abroad, I think the BJP historically has had very, very strong basis of support among Indian diaspora, especially Hindu diasporic communities in the US, in the UK and so on.
Well, clearly Modi is a polished diplomat at home on the world stage. In fact, he's known for going well beyond the usual handshakes to be a little more intimate.
मेरा प्यार बारा नमस्कार.
Let's talk about you.
During my campaign, I pledged that if elected, India would have a true friend in the White House. And that is now exactly what you have, a true friend.
Let's talk about
आपका स्वागत है मेरे दोस्त.
India is a natural partner and a trusted friend.
Let's talk about you. Let's talk about me. Let's talk about love.
Well, anyone who can get out of Trump's special handshake is doing pretty well. And Nilanjan, you three didn't get a chance to see that, but essentially it was a montage of your Prime Minister hugging everybody. Why does he do the hug?
I think it's basically a personal way of, reaching out and just to prove to his supporters that he, who was ostracized by the global community for so many years, that he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, is finally getting acceptance on his terms and the way he wants to do it. That there's no way that people can resist his beer hug.
Krishna, you've met the Prime Minister a couple of times. Is he a warm person in real life?
At least I have got a big hug from him the first time I met him, because we did discuss a lot of issues. Maybe he had special affection. But having said that, we see the world as we are, not as it is. And if you judge a man by his behavior, you got to also judge him by his intentions. We cannot be convenient when we judge individuals. His intentions and behavior are in tune with the culture of India, and we are warm people, we are friendly people, and not many people might hug that much, But Modi ji believes that if there is a friendship needs to be extended in the shortest possible time, what else can be a better instrument than a good hug?
Okay, fair enough. Subir, you want to come in there? It's a very important hugging point. Do you want to embrace it?
Well, yeah, I'm going to embrace that point. I think it plays really well to his base constituency within India because they like to see him in intimate scenarios with world leaders. But ultimately, it's not behavior or intention. You have to judge a prime minister in terms of the outcomes. And to that extent, the tightness of the hugs has not really translated into great diplomatic victories for India. One can see that in relation to China, and one can also see that in relation to the US, for example, where right now we are in a kind of a tariff-oriented dispute with them. Yes.
It's all got a bit serious again, Subir. You are in the London studio. I'm coming to give you a big hug. Seems like you need one in just a moment, but thank you for your contribution to the Nexus. Krishna, thank you also. And Nilanjan, thank you very much as well. Well, that is all we have time for this week. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.